In this episode of The Omega Beam, Golden and I discuss Aquaman, the latest movie in the DC Extended Cinematic Universe. Full speed ahead. The Omega Beam. The Omega Beam. Welcome to The Omega Beam number 29. I'm your host, Orren Merton. So Golden and I dutifully went out to see Aquaman in IMAX 3D on opening night, and upon returning, we recorded our conversation about our thoughts and observations. So you know what that means. Spoilers! Spoilers ahead. Lots and lots of spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, go out and see the movie first, then come back and listen to this podcast. All right, spoiler warnings are in place, and let's get to it. I am here with Golden, and we just saw Aquaman, the latest DC movie.
In IMAX 3D?
In IMAX 3D. This is the first movie I've seen in IMAX 3D in a long time. I'm trying to remember the last one I saw in IMAX 3D. I think it might have been Tron Legacy.
I think that the last one I saw was probably one of the Star Wars movies.
It may have been Avatar. Did Avatar come out?
Yes, it definitely... Well, it came out, but I don't know.
Was Avatar after Tron Legacy?
I'm guessing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. But those were the two movies I've seen in IMAX 3D. I'm generally not a fan of 3D. Sometimes it gives me headaches. Sometimes if they didn't do the 3D processing from the beginning, I feel it can detract from the movie. One thing I've said this on podcasts before is that for some reason, 3D makes everything look small to me. It looks smaller than it does in 2D.
It does enlarge it.
And then, like in a cityscape, like you're on a sort of helicopter view coming down on the town, and the town ends up looking like each house is the size of a thimble.
I've never experienced that.
Yeah, that's how it affects me. It's just the way my eyes see things, and everybody sees 3D a little differently.
I have to say, the Avengers Endgame trailer was much better in 3D than it was watching it on your screen at home.
Yeah, I think it was fine in 2D.
I mean, the part now with Tony sitting there, because we were sitting right behind the rail, it looked like we were like right there on the ground with him.
So this is, what Warner Brothers is hoping, that we're going to, podcast about their movie by talking about how much we love the Marvel trailer that came before it. That's what they're hoping people are going to do. So what did we think of Aquaman?
Overall, it was great.
I really, really enjoyed Aquaman. I walked in expecting a good time, and I got it.
Yeah, it definitely was a fun and good time. From the moment that the credits start to roll, or the intro starts to roll,
right,
and you have all of these, you're waiting for the normal DC intro, but it's not the normal DC intro because it's Aquaman.
Right, it's underwater.
And just about everything has this water effect to it.
Right. Yeah, it gripped me from the beginning, and I knew a lot of the story from the comics, so I'm always interested when I do know the comics to sort of figure out what they're keeping and what they're changing. So I like the fact that they kept a lot of it. I guess I shouldn't be surprised because one of the people who co-wrote the story is Jeff Johns, who is sort of credited with the revival of Aquaman as a cool character in the 2011 New 52 reboot. He'd become kind of a joke. Aquaman has become the butt of a lot of jokes. Like, he's the guy...
Well, if he's using the end of his trident, maybe, but...
Right.
Even that's pointy, though. I don't think it's very blunt. He's
just the guy in the orange and green who talks to fish and rides a seahorse. And it sort of has become like a gag.
Those seahorses... Those were some serious seahorses.
Hey, they made them look cool. They made it all look cool. I mean, the visuals in this movie were really excellent. They pulled out all the stops when it came to making it a truly other world. I mean, you could compare this to any science fiction movie in space or whatever. Lord of the Rings style fantasy movie. I mean, they really built a complete world in this one.
Yeah.
And they did a great job with it. They really used the sea well, in that people moved in 3 dimensions. Everything moved in 3 dimensions. It wasn't just people walking back and forth with bubbles coming out of their mouth to remind you it's the sea. They were really just on all planes, twisting, turning, rising, falling, going back and forth, like you could if you could just move in all 3 axes at once.
And at times they start to kind of use their arms to move a little bit. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, your arms are back because somehow there's this innate ability within them to propel them through the water.
Right, and that is one of the things. We already saw this in the other DC movies, that Aquaman had these sort of jet stream swimming ability where, you get him in the water and boom, he's, faster than a racehorse on land. And they can all do that. It's not just him, it's all the Atlanteans have that jet propulsion ability.
Yes, but not all of them can breathe both water and air.
Yeah, that's true. I don't honestly know if that's a comic thing or if that's a movie thing, but they had it in the movies where only the highborn, only the royalty were able to breathe on land, and that no one else could. So I thought that was an interesting twist. I thought it kind of added a little bit more jeopardy to the Atlanteans who were chasing Aquaman and stuff like that. I've always said with these superhero movies...
Okay, come on. Are you still wondering how eventually he's ever going to get his head out of the toilet?
Oh, the one who...
In the one scene?
Yeah. Maybe he just went home at a certain point. I think a lot of these superhero movies really rise and fall with the casting. And as much as the world at large, including me, likes to get on Zack Snyder's case for the fact that he is more or less responsible for most of the DC movies that have not been winners, what he did do incredibly well, in most cases, is casting. He picked Henry Cavill for Superman, who I think is a complete and total win for the part. He picked Gal Gadot for Wonder Woman, who is a revelation and amazing. And he picked Jason Momoa for Aquaman, who I think, as they say, inhabits the character. He is totally and completely believable. You don't see this and say, oh, this is, what was his name? The character that Jason Momoa played?
Oh, Khal Drogo?
Yes, you don't look at this and say, oh, that's Khal Drogo. I mean, no, you look at this and see Aquaman through and through. So I think he did a great job, and certainly has the physicality for the part. And I think, the acting is up to snuff, too. I think Amber Heard as Mara was also a good pick, and Willem Dafoe as Vulko was a good pick. I mean, really, I can't think of anyone in the cast that I didn't believe in their parts. I think they were all well cast.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that everyone was well cast. I thought that the movie was very well paced. The music was really nice because it kept shifting, and I wasn't sure if I was going to get some sort of techno-type influenced music or something that was more seeming like we were under the water again, or something a little bit more contemporary. So I liked how it shifted and it kind of moved with the atmosphere of the movie.
Yeah, I really loved the soundtrack for this movie, and I was interested to find out that the person who wrote the soundtrack was Rupert Gregson Williams, who is the same person that did the Wonder Woman soundtrack, which I was not particularly impressed with. It was just sort of a run-of-the-mill orchestral soundtrack, in my opinion. I liked a couple of the pieces. I liked the end credits a lot, but really, I think that the Junkie XL and Hans Zimmer short theme for Wonder Woman that they did for Batman v Superman was absolutely incredibly amazing. That kind of electrified cello theme for her, and nothing in his soundtrack really lived up to that. So the fact that he did this soundtrack, which I thought was so good and was so creative and not run-of-the-mill, was really cool.
See, I liked the score for Wonder Woman, so...
Mm-hmm. So there you go. So what else did you think plot-wise?
Plot-wise, you had the intro immediately of the submarine, and at first I'm already wondering why they're even, trying to attack the submarine. And then before that scene's already over, I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is where, we have to introduce Black Manta, which I'm not as well versed with the comic books and all the characters, so I have heard the word or the name Black Manta and figured, okay, this is going to be the villain, but wait a minute, this can't be the villain for this movie because we already have another kind of somewhat villain for this movie, so wonder where this is going.
He's kind of the junior villain for the movie. He's the also-ran villain.
Well, then they spend all of this time on him creating this outfit and reworking it, and then it's in one scene with this big fight sequence, and then he's out.
Well, he's the first guy to do real damage to Aquaman.
Yes.
For the entire movie, so he's a pretty formidable foe.
They gave him the equipment.
He is a pretty formidable foe, but certainly Black Manta will be a major villain in the future. It goes without saying there will be a sequel because already in the international. He comes back in the end credits, but I was going to mention the fact that already in the just preview days and the premieres internationally, this movie is like blown other films out of the water.
And it was nice to see in the end credit scene that you have the newscaster that everyone's making fun of because no one believes him and he's getting bullied on TV basically. And he's coming back, which you said that he is actually a character in the comic books.
He's a character in the comics.
So that makes sense.
Yeah. He was definitely somebody there.
Going back to plot, I think that unless you are just not well versed with, you just completely ignore any and all foreshadowing. The submarine being stolen at the very beginning, I'm just waiting for the movie, waiting for it to come back into play. So it's not a surprise later on when the submarine is used.
Sure. Well, there's I think it was by Kafka, because I believe it's called Kafka's, or is it Chekhov's gun, not Kafka's gun. It's that if you introduce a gun in the first act, you need to use it in the third. So they do that all the time in this movie. If something comes up at one point, it's gonna be used again, and it's gonna be obvious, whatever it is. So on the one hand, that just shows you that this plot is constructed. It was well constructed and not simply haphazard. Hey, now we need something to connect this other big tentpole action scene. I mean, there is a plot, but it's very linear and it's very. It's pretty easy to suss out.
Well, he's going to talk to the fish.
Right.
Because he can talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, towards the end, he's going to talk to the big bad creature.
Right. Of course. I have to say, though, again, from a comic perspective, one of the criticisms that I have and other people have of the whole sort of Christopher Nolan / Zack Snyder sort of reticence of the superhero world is at the same time they're making all these superhero movies, the Batman movies and then Man of Steel and the Batman v Superman, all that. At the same time they're making all these superhero worlds, it's like they're embarrassed by it. In Man of Steel, there's only one single moment where he is called Superman and they're embarrassed by it. It's just quietly, the guy says Superman is coming in. He's like, Superman? And the guy's like, yeah, that's what they're calling the alien, sir. And he's like apologetic about it. That's the one and only time he's ever called Superman. They don't like bringing in powers. And in Justice League, they make a joke out of, so here you can talk to fish. And even, Arthur doesn't really admit it. He says, well, I talk to the water. It's like Zack Snyder is scared of going full superhero. Well, and one of the things I loved about this movie is they own it. They just went, you know what? He talks to fish.
Oh, yeah.
Damn it. And he likes it.
And it's not just that. I mean, it's I'm not saying it's wrong. It's pretty easy to see that that's going to come in.
Oh, yeah.
What I did like, though, is when he talks to the creature at the end, it's like, hey, wait a minute, you can understand me?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how long it has been since I've been able to actually talk to another thing?
Yeah.
It has not talked to anyone.
That would be
It has not talked to anyone since who? Since King Atlan?
Yeah.
That was the last time that this creature has been able to actually have a conversation. You would think that creature would be bored out of its mind and lonely. That's why it acts like that. It just has to kill everyone because they just won't talk to it.
And fun little cameo, we found out from IMDb that the voice of the big bad evil monster was Julie Andrews. How cool is that? Yeah,
well, it is Mary Poppins Returns.
That's right. That's right. So if she couldn't be Mary Poppins, she could at least be the big bad monster in Aquaman. In this
so right after that, you have the two armies that are about to go at each other, and you have this big divide between them, and they start to rush towards each other. And I'm thinking, and then now's when Aquaman's supposed to show up and break them up and stop them from killing each other. Because
but
this
they
is going
did
to
get
be
a lot of killing in first.
Oh, yeah. And I'm thinking, wow, that is such a waste of all of the different peoples. And this is such a waste of his people. And then even he did it, though. He comes up with the big bad, and he's, like, killing them, too.
Well, you know, they're Atlanteans. They're violent people. I did think that like I said, I thought the visuals were great. I thought most of the CGI was excellent. I liked the way they had them talk underwater. Everybody makes fun.
Okay, so you were able to understand every word?
No, I was not able to understand every word.
And we were in a theater with very loud theater. I have very good hearing, and I'm usually very good at figuring out words, and I was still sitting there a couple times thinking, what did they just say?
I think sometimes the big sound problem. I think sometimes it's easier when it's sort of narrow-banded through one speaker, and you're not trying to, capture what they heard through a ton of ambient speakers. I don't know. When it's on home video, we'll see. If nothing else, there's closed captioning.
So you were saying how, they're embracing the fact that this is a comic book movie.
Right.
Which I think they had to do, because otherwise the extra-dimensional pockets that both Mera and Aquaman have on them that was holding their clothes they used to swim in.
I think you should be clear that you're joking and they don't actually say, hey, good, I have this extra-dimensional pocket. That's not a real thing. She's making fun of their clothing.
I mean, because they clearly are not wearing their other clothing underneath the clothing that they're wearing.
Yeah.
They're dressed very casual, and then all of a sudden they're both back to the outfits that they were wearing at the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah. Do you know where they kept their clothing?
I don't want to know.
The same place that the music is coming from. So, yeah, I mean, this is not a movie that you really sit there and sort of nitpick about, because there's all kinds of stuff like that. There's all kinds of moments where, if you really think too hard about the plot, you're going to wonder, well maybe there's something else you could have done here.
It's not just the plot. I mean, there were a couple times I just had to remind myself, this is a comic book movie, and there's nothing wrong with that. Part of that was right before the first fight scene. They're about to fight, and Mera comes out, and she's wearing this gorgeous gown. And it's like jellyfish or something else, and they're floating around her legs, and she's got this high collar that comes around and almost surrounds her head, and it's really gorgeous. But it doesn't look like it's long enough to cover her entire length of leg and feet. And I'm just sitting there wondering, where are her feet? Are her feet there? Are they floating behind her? And it kind of kept pulling me out anytime that they showed her torso. And then later on in the movie, most of the costuming was wonderfully done. I really liked the costuming.
Aquaman of costuming, I just have to say for a brief moment, I really loved the fact that with both Black Manta and in the end Aquaman after he gets his trident, they went full comic. I mean, they didn't try and modernize it. They went for the orange scale mail over green pants.
Oh, it looked great.
And with Black Manta, they had the whole helmet that looks like
it has to be bigger.
Yeah, it does.
He said that.
He did. And I love it. It's like, why shy away from it? Why pretend? This is an undersea movie about Atlanteans, for God's sake.
And I think that with the elegance of Mera's gown and just the elegance of some of the other outfits, that the Queen's outfit at the end, just Queen Atlanta's outfit that was over like her pantsuit thing, just kind of failed for me.
Speaking of...
it didn't really seem elegant. It didn't seem to flow like I would expect her clothing to.
I understand. Speaking of Queen Atlanta, I will say that while like I said, the visuals are fantastic, one thing they did do in order to bring Nicole Kidman and Willem Dafoe into flashbacks with the young Aquaman is de-age them digitally. And I personally, and I told you this as we were watching it, I personally felt the de-aging on Nicole Kidman was not realistic enough. I did not even recognize her in some scenes at all. Willem Dafoe, it didn't look real, but it looked human. I mean, he looked like a guy who was just younger, even though we know what Willem Dafoe looked like when he was actually that age, and it wasn't that. But Nicole Kidman, she looked kind of digital at times when in the flashbacks. I mean, when we weren't in flashback mode, they look great. But that's one of the places I think the visuals kind of failed.
I wasn't bothered by that at all. So, no, I mean, definitely, I think it's definitely a winner. I think that they just need to not fall into what some people, sometimes refer to the Star Trek movies, that every other movie works and every.
Right.
And I think for the most part, I think one of the first ones that really worked was Man of Steel.
Right. The first one was good.
And then you had Batman v Superman, which some people love, some people hate, and it's kind of hit or miss.
Right. Suicide Squad was the next one.
Suicide Squad was the next one. I didn't even think about that one. And then you had Wonder Woman,
which
right?
was a winner.
Which was a winner.
Straight up winner. And
then you're back to Justice League, which is some people love, some people don't.
Right.
And then you're going to have a winner with Aquaman. So it seems like every other one, which is a lot better than I think the very beginning of that, with Justice League and...
Right. Well, I also think the first of all, I think one of the problems DC had is they were kind of trying to chase the dragon of Marvel, but they hadn't put in the time. You can't have 10 years of you can't build a team the way they did on 2 movies.
But DC did have many years of very good movies with the different Batman movies, the Dark Knight.
Right, and that's the thing. And I think they're doing that now. In the Aquaman movie, there was one single reference to Justice League, and that was it. And other than that, it was a total standalone movie you would not have known took place in the same world. And it seems like that's what they're doing with Shazam as well, that it's its own thing. Yes, there's a little newspaper clipping of Superman, but it's its own thing. Superman is not in the movie. And so I think maybe DC's realized that they need to do that. They need to focus on individual movies that are good, that are written well, that have, good directors who have a feel for what they're doing, and just focus on those movies and leave the team movies, till they've built a roster of heroes that people really want to see, rather than start with one, Superman movie and then say, okay, and then the next one's going to have 3 and the next one's going to be all 6. I think they tried to shortcut their way to Avengers, and it failed.
Well, I think the best part of Batman v Superman for me was not in the title.
Was Wonder Woman.
It was all the Wonder Woman scenes, yeah.
Absolutely. They could have just made it a Wonder Woman movie, and it would have been fine. I would have been happy if they would have made a Wonder Woman Superman movie.
But I know a lot of people that I've talked to that really enjoy the Batman v Superman because they see something else in it that I didn't see, but that's them.
Well, I
think Aquaman is going to be leading the charge. Question is, will the next DC movie, will it continue?
The trailers...
Come on, say it. Say it. What's the next one?
Shazam.
Yeah.
The trailers for Shazam make it look fun.
And he is definitely comic booky.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, he was, Shazam was always a bit more of a spoofy character. From the original, God, I want to think the company's called like Fawcett Comics or something, but I could be wrong on that one. But I think he was originally designed to be a bit happy-go-lucky and all the rest. And it's a 13-year-old boy who says a magic word and becomes a grown-up. So, I mean, that's inherently going to create a less mature superhero. So I think there's a lot of room for fun there. And with Aquaman, they decided, hey, let's have a lot of fun. I saw I read some summaries of reviews, and people were critical of the dialogue because they were saying, oh, he talks like a bro, and it's not, the sort of highbrow, epic superhero language. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? That didn't bother me at all because that's the like character he is.
A person.
Yeah, that's the character he is. That basically we're talking about a kid who was raised in rural Massachusetts as the son of a lighthouse keeper. This is not someone who was raised in palaces with libraries and tutors.
No, but his dad still taught him quite a bit.
Oh, he's not dumb. I mean, he knows his history and he knows that he's got a broad scope of knowledge, but he's certainly not going to talk like he's been spending years in Cambridge. And I think that's good. I think it's characterization, and I think it worked.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. Enjoyed it a lot.
I have to say, I think that one of the things this movie has done is it's really set the bar for underwater movies. And there aren't a ton of movies that take place underwater, but we've seen some. I mean, there was The Abyss many years ago, and
well, most of that was inside.
Right, most of that was inside.
Inside underwater, but
there's been some underwater movies, but I think this one really is going to set the bar for what you have to do to make it look good. And I think I give a lot of credit to James Wan. I mean, he directed the film, and I think he really did a good job with keeping it moving and utilizing the space really dynamically. So I give him a lot of credit for that.
Well, I've always had a problem with a lot of movies, and maybe this is something that comes from the horror then. Mm-hmm. Because my whole thing with watching, if you go back and watch like Alien and all those other horror movies, you would think that in space, they think in all the dimensions. But yet, when the creatures attack, they just never think to actually look up. Mm-hmm. And he made sure that they're looking and they're using all of that.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I know that James Wan had done all these horror movies, none of which I've seen because I don't watch horror movies. But I had heard his name from The Fast and the Furious. So this was not his first rodeo as far as action movies went either. And, he certainly knows his way around a fight.
I mean, if you're looking for a lighthearted, little bit dash of serious, action, adventure, a tiny bit of comedy in there, let's go take a picture with the fish man, this is the movie to go see.
Yeah, and also I have to say, it's nice, this has become more common now, but I like how Mara is allowed to be completely kick-ass. She's in no way a wilting lily. She's a princess, but she's not a princess that needs to be rescued. She's the princess who does the rescuing. She is a fierce warrior in her own right. Mm-hmm. And hey, I love seeing women kick ass.
Yeah, it's good.
So hey, everyone go see Aquaman. Proof that DC can actually make good superhero movies when they put good teams on them.
Once more, because they did make some good movies.
They did make some good movies. Man of Steel was good. Wonder Woman was great. Even before that,
I mean...
Right.
The Dark Knight series, it was very good.
Absolutely. I'm referring to this DC-connected universe that Zack Snyder
Apparently I'm just trying to go back to a time when the movies were just...
Well, hell, if we want to go way back, I thought 1978 Superman with Christopher Reeve was fantastic. I mean, the flying effects are kind of dated at this point, but... it was a great film, and Christopher Reeve is still, in many ways, the Superman.
Yep.
So, all right. Thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed our discussion of Aquaman. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/29. If you liked this episode, please leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app, iTunes, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have any comments or questions or suggestions for panels you'd like us to do, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. This is being recorded just before Christmas time, so happy holidays and Merry Christmas. Be good to yourselves and each other, and catch you next time.